Into the moonlight over Britain they roar, seeking out their prey.
Clumsy in dogfights and difficult to bail from, the Defiant was redeployed to night fight. By the way, it had better success. But the limitations imposed by the weight of its turret and the fact that it carried a second crew member led to big losses, and the Defiant was pulled from combat in 1942.
Death strikes at the swastikas by night.
It finally found its niche in gunnery training, target towing, communications jamming, and air-sea rescue.
The night sky.
The Brits also put American fighters into service. The Grumman F-4F Wildcat was Grumman's first monoplane and flew with both the United States and the British navies. Both land and carrier-based, it was a Wildcat that became the first American-built fighter to score a kill in 1940 when it brought down a Junkers Ju-88 bomber. When the United States entered the war, the Wildcat was its main shipboard aircraft. Although the Japanese Mitsubishi Zero was a faster aeroplane, the Wildcat's rugged construction enabled it to absorb more damage and kept it in the fight. Wildcats were vital defenders in the battles for Wake Island, the Coral Sea, Midway, and Guadalcanal.
The Interceptor Pursuit P-38. It has been developed solely for national defense, and Army officials consider it the fastest military plane in the world today. The P-38, a man-made comet.
The Lockheed P-38 Lightning was another American fighter to make its name in the Pacific theater of war. Its unusual design included weapons mounted in the nose, firing crisscross trajectories that gave it a range of up to 1,000 yards. The Lightning was the first American fighter to incorporate stainless steel and smooth, flush-riveted, butt-jointed aluminum skin panels, as well as the first to fly faster than 400 miles an hour. Its twin Allison engines gave it an extra level of safety, with a number of Lightnings limping home on one engine. When it appeared from out of the blue and swooped into service for Japan against America at Pearl Harbor, the Mitsubishi A6M50 outclassed every Allied fighter in the Pacific. The little airplane had exceptional maneuverability and unparalleled range, and was the first carrier-borne aircraft to have better performance than land-based ones. The first Zeros were piloted by highly trained airmen and quickly established the ascendancy over Allied forces. However, heavy losses reduced the numbers of experienced pilots, and future encounters were weighted more heavily towards the Americans. Clever tactics developed by the American military included flying in formation of two fighter planes and waiting for a Zero to come up on the tail of one of them. The two American airplanes would turn towards each other, and the Zero thus come into the sights of the oncoming plane, making it simple to pick it off. Tactics like this caused huge casualties for the Japanese Air Force and helped the Americans win the battles of Midway and the Coral Sea, despite having inferior fighters at the time. The Nakajima Ki-43 was Japan's best fighter, known in Allied circles as Oscar. A single-seater, it saw its first action in 1943 and addressed the need for a maneuverable aeroplane capable of delivering heavy fire. The aircraft's Hayate engine gave it a much better climb rate and a top speed comparable to the P-51D Mustang and the P-47D Thunderbolt. With both sides desperately looking for the technology that would blow the opposition out of the water, World War II was an important time for aerospace development. As the home of the world's first serious rocket tests, Germany led the way in jet aircraft, launching the Me-163 Comet in 1944. The revolutionary swept-wing fighter came from Alexander Lippisch, famous for his rocket research throughout the 1930s. The Comet contained a Walter rocket motor that harnessed the explosive power of rocket fuel to send the aircraft speeding through the air at an unmatchable 990 kilometers an hour. The jet ran rings around its Allied opponents, but its short range led to many missions being aborted. Landing had its own share of dangers, as the pilot had to use a spring-loaded skid running centerline on the fuselage. Ultimately, the Comets made little impact in the war, other than to increase the knowledge of jet propulsion. Of the 300 produced, they made only 9 kills. 14 Comets were lost, with several destroyed during landings. The Germans had also been working on the jet engine well before the beginning of the war. The airframe design first flew in 1941 using a conventional Junkers Hummel engine. When the turbofan engine was perfected, it was fitted to the swept-wing Messerschmitt 262 and flown in July 1942. The Me 262 went into operational service over a long period of time, as new tactics and procedures were developed for the first jet fighter ever to fly. Dubbed the Schwalbe, or Swallow, pilots like to call her the Storm Bird. Several prototype designs were developed, and in 1944, a test unit was put into service. The multi-role fighter made its first kill of a Mosquito reconnaissance plane in July of that year. The plane had a top speed of 900 kilometers per hour with a ceiling of 11,450 meters. It carried 4 30mm cannons and could carry 24 55mm rockets or 2 250-kilogram bombs. A total of 1,430 manufactured, but they saw little combat towards the end of the war. The RAF have no records of any engagements with the jet fighter. However, the US Army Air Force did claim to have shot down several in dogfights. The Gloucester Meteor was Britain's first jet fighter, entering service in 1944. Despite not being as advanced as the Comet, Meteors flew in active duty for decades, a testament to its designers. The Meteor's strength was the simplicity of its design, a simple all-metal body with low-mounted straight wings, 2 spars, twin turbojets, and a high-mounted horizontal tailplane. When it came into service, the Meteor was no faster than conventional aeroplanes, but its ability to maintain speed at low altitudes made it a valuable asset against the V-1 German flying bombs. The end of World War II did not mean an end to fighter aircraft development. Europe was divided by the victors into Eastern of the First, setting the scene for the simmering hostilities of the Cold War. One of the first places to see the hostility erupt was Korea in 1950. The Korean War became an arena for the superpowers to test their new weaponry, among them the jet fighter.
The world's fastest plane, the jet-propelled Shooting Star. It hurtles through space at nearly 9 miles a minute.
Thus, the United States had the opportunity to test its first jet fighter in combat. The Lockheed F-80C Shooting Star made its maiden flight in 1944, but never saw action during World War II. Instead, the F-80C became the first airplane to take part in an all-jet fighter battle when it shot down a Russian MiG-15 on November the 8th, 1950.
New York to Paris in 6 hours.
The Soviets had also provided Lavochkin La-11s to the Chinese for use in the war. The piston-engine fighter flew many combat air control missions, downing both bombers and fighters.
Jets include these Yaks, the Red's first jet fighter, probably based on German models. 100 miles faster than the Yaks are 2 newer models, the Lavochkin.
But the MiG's advanced design made it the favored aircraft of the Reds, and its primary target was the destructive B-29 Super Fortress bomber. MiG-15 fighters stalked the Super Fortress, armed with 2 23mm cannons capable of firing 80 rounds per gun, and a 37mm gun with a 40-round capacity. It was well equipped to shoot down bombers, but less able to engage in dogfights because of the weapon's limited rate of fire and relatively low velocity. However, it was usually able to evade pursuit, with a rate of climb 900 meters per minute faster than American-built Sabres. The MiG's smooth silver outer skin, bubble canopy, and metal-skinned wing certainly caught people's attention. But despite the MiG's advantages, the superior training of the American pilots gave them the ascendancy, and F-18